and welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, President Muhammadu Buhari arrives France, begins three-day visit. Enforcement of Treasury single account begins tomorrow as deadline for commencement of TSA expires. The former immigration boss David Paradang faces EFCC as he defends himself of charges of corruption. And Australia elects new Prime Minister after Tony Abbott was ousted as leader of the central-right Liberal Party. And on business news tonight, the Federal Inland Revenue Service bans consultants from assessing and receiving tax revenue on behalf of the federal government.
On sports news tonight, Tosin Oke of Nigeria wins triple jump gold at the Africa Games in Congo-Brazzaville.
The Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, says ensuring peace, security and stability in Africa is achievable if attention is focused on early warning and effective conflict resolution mechanisms. Professor Osinbajo told representatives of regional economic communities at the African Union Security Council meeting in Abuja today that harmonization of efforts among communities and the AU Security Council is critical at this time. Our correspondent, Omologo Nnadi, reports.
This meeting on peace and stability in the African continent, convened in Abuja, is aimed at mapping out ways to enhance effective cooperation between the African Union, Peace and Security Council and regional economic communities in the promotion of peace, security and stability in Africa. Coming at a time of recurring conflicts across Africa, these decision makers in security are looking at practical measures to ensure African leaders pool resources and efforts together to solve their common problems. And the Vice President of Nigeria says key areas require collective attention and decisive action if peace is to gradually return to the continent.
Attention should be focused on how the Peace and Security Council and the regional economic communities can enhance effectiveness and efficiency using their comparative advantages and various capacities within the context of subsidiarity and complementarity in the areas of early warning and early action, conflict prevention, peacemaking, post-conflict peace building, reconstruction and development, strengthening of democratic practices and good governance, as well as in combating terrorism and violent extremism.
But while Africa has been referred to by many as a continent of crisis, key players here disagree, but say Africa must now address its problems on a regional level first, before soliciting or accepting help from outside the continent.
It's only when we, the Africans, at the regional level or the continental level, address our security challenges. It's only after we do that the UN comes in. So we cannot wait for the outside world to love us more than we love ourselves. We have to take our security and development challenges in our own hands.
The rest of Africa, therefore, have the Herculean task of ensuring peace and security on the continent as a bedrock for development and good governance, especially against the backdrop of unprecedented levels of insurgency, terrorism, and kidnappings all over the continent.
Besides this collaboration with the African Union, there are other efforts at the sub-regional level supervised by the ECOWAS Commission. There is also a standby African force set aside for humanitarian intervention. But all these cannot yield the expected results without strong coordination and cooperation among all nations in Africa who share common problems and challenges. Omelogo Nnadi, Channels Television News.
The President, Muhammadu Buhari, has arrived in France for a three-day official visit. His presidential jet left the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport earlier today. President Buhari was accompanied on the trip by the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Munguno, and the permanent secretaries in the Ministries of Defense, Finance, Agriculture, Foreign Affairs and Industry. Also on the trip are the permanent secretaries of Trade and Investment, as well as the chief executive of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. The visit is at the instance of the President of France, François Hollande, and the platform will be used for bilateral talks, discussions on Boko Haram, and the strengthening of defense, security, trade, and investment. Now it's a case of the hunter becoming the hunted, as the former immigration boss, David Paradang, is facing the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission for alleged corrupt practices. The spokesperson of the EFCC, Wilson Uwajare, confirmed to Channels Television that the former immigration boss was quizzed earlier today. Mr. Paradang was suspended by President Muhammadu Buhari in August, weeks after a wanted terrorist, Ahmad al-Asir, obtained a Nigerian visa from Lebanon. While the coordinator of the National Hajj Commission, Alhaji Sulaiman Usman, is asking the Saudi authorities to release Nigerian pilgrim officials who have been detained in Saudi Arabia. He says the officials, including a medical worker, are among those arrested from Jeddah by the Saudi security. They are alleged to have traveled from Jeddah to Mecca without an official permit. According to him, we're trying to secure the release of our pilgrim officials who were arrested, put in their ambulance, and taken to prison while on their way back from Jeddah. He added that the rescue officials during the Grand Mosque crane tragedy identified those involved in the tragic incident from their uniforms, as most of them were not carrying identification cards. Now, by midnight, which is just a couple of hours from now, the deadline given by President Buhari for the commencement of the Treasury single account will expire. Starting from tomorrow, it's expected that all ministries and agencies will have their accounts into the CBN run account. Now, even though some economists applaud the president's directive, many are skeptical about the process and its negative impact on the banking sector. Market watchers, however, believe that the process could boost the nation's revenue drive and help reduce corruption. Now, bearing in mind the nation's banks depend heavily on government deposits, what does this portend for the financial sector and the economy? Now, joining me now to look at this is the Managing Director, Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Mr. Bismarck Rwani. Thanks a lot for joining us on the News at 10.
Jama, yeah.
We've had this discussion, and I remember the last time you were all for it and you talked about the positive aspects of
Absolutely.
it. But you can see that the banks have already started taking some haircuts in terms of laying people off. Are you still as positive as you were before?
Very positive, but I have to put the caveat. One, what does the TSA mean? I think we need to explain to Nigerians.
Yeah.
TSA is a treasury single account for all ministries and government agencies, designed primarily to eliminate ghost workers, and two, to reduce the corruption in the system of treasury accounts of commercial banks and the government agencies. Now, and also it reduces excess liquidity in the system. That's the good side of it. But the point is that what is total money supply in Nigeria is 18.42 trillion, of which only 1.1 is cash in circulation, 5.2 trillion is current accounts, and 11.95, which is 12 trillion, is liquidity in the banking system. Government accounts are 10% of the banking system. So it means that 1.2 trillion naira will be taken out of the system, at least temporarily, before these agencies start paying contractors and paying every other person. Now, what does it mean? It means that at this time when the central bank has already taken 31% of all deposits away from the banking system, if you take away this 1.2 trillion in addition to that, it will, to a large extent, strangulate the banks in the short run.
Exactly.
All right? But we need to look at what are the good sides of it, right? So the thing to do is actually to bring down the CRR rate from 31% to something like maybe 15 or 20% to give a breather to the bank so that the excess liquidity doesn't turn into strangulation. I think that's important.
In terms of customers now, for like the big lenders, the big,
Yes.
what is the strangulation? Are we going to feel that? Is it going to be tough times ahead for such people as well? While you're analyzing that,
The implications of this are simple. Because there's a shortage of liquidity from tomorrow, interest rates are going to increase. When interest rates increase, first thing that happens is that cost of borrowing increases for small and medium-scale enterprises. But more than anything else, when interest rates increase, the stock market actually declines in value. The naira will appreciate temporarily, and borrowing costs will increase, and also the effect of on unemployment and underemployment means that, so there are the good sides and the bad sides. The only way to mitigate this, the bad sides, which are the side effects of taking a medication, because taking this is medication, trying to sanitize the financial system, but it has some side effects. The side effects is that it creates shortage of liquidity and friction in the short run. To do this, you need to reduce the cash reserve ratio so that the banks can have a breather, so that it doesn't create dysfunctional
Do you see them as doing enough in terms of bringing down the side effects? Because it seems to be all medication, using the metaphor that you're using,
yes.
It seems to be all the medication. Look at the unemployment rate already. It's already what it is. And then we find that, as you said, a lot of the SMEs might have to lay people off. The banks will have to do the same. Are we putting those measures in place as well, just as we are trying to roll out this new initiative as well?
Well, I think those measures will come almost simultaneously. There's what you call the bank, the Monetary Policy Committee meeting is happening on the 21st and 22nd. One would assume even before then, or if not at that time, the central bank governor and his team will look at the system liquidity, and then they are not in the position, they are not aiming to disrupt the banking system. Yeah. Their job is to create stability, systemic stability, and to manage inflation, the exchange rate. All of these variables are put together. They will, I think, in their best judgment, because they are reasonable men, that they will take those steps to ensure that the banking system is safe, whilst at the same time we accomplish the objective of taking away the ghost workers, and there are thousands and thousands of them, right? And taking away that liquidity, that float of liquidity, which people have abused in the past over the years. This thing was first started in 1989 under Falai and Ochuo Kongo. They took that step to withdraw liquidity from the system. It created all sorts of disruptions. So this is a much more efficient way of making sure that everybody has a single account, and payments go directly from that account to contractors, to employees, and everything. And it's, it's it's efficient, it is systems driven, and the benefits to the country far outweigh the costs.
The negatives. With enforcement beginning tomorrow, what do you then foresee?
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
First of all, there will be a liquidity crunch, and people will panic. Interest rates will go through the roof initially, but then they will come down and stabilize, right? And lending will be restricted initially. And then when people now see that the money that is taken away, say for example, you pay a government agency and you pay to the central bank, that agency is going to pay its contractors, pay its workers, and that money comes back into the banking system. The banking system is divided into two. The money is either with the central bank or with the banks. Everybody in the country has an account with a bank, so your payments will come to you. But the government, the definition of a central bank is that central bank is the government's bank and the banker's bank. So every bank has an account with the central bank, and every government agency has an account with the central bank. But the central bank and the government have to pay individuals, they have to pay firms, they have to pay contractors. That money comes back into the system and it's done efficiently. What was happening before, they were trapped in all sorts of sweetheart deals. Government agencies had money, they will not pay their workers, they will not pay the contractors, interest brokerage deals.
And you don't think that it will happen again with this?
Well, you minimize, people always look for ways to game the system.
That's what I was just about to say.
The point is that you reduce the probability of it happening and the level of it, which is destabilizing to the system. What you have is money that is sterilized and doing nothing, not working. And so once you increase this, you increase the velocity of circulation, the number of transactions, and people will get more employed, right? In the medium term. But in the short run, there'll be some distortions.
All right. Thank you so much, with Managing Director, Financial Derivatives, Mr. Bismarck Rwani, for sharing your thoughts with us on the News at 10 tonight.
Thank you very much.
In part 2, after break, we round up our review of the President's 100 days in office. Our focus tonight is the energy sector. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.